And I always loved Rob and Wayne's World. Oh, he was just somebody I just knew and liked, but I didn't know anything about him personally. And one of the first real kind of moments where I got to see who he was we did a couple of days. We shot that show in LA, but we did a couple of days in Austin in the first season. And we were wrapping up a day, and and my wife was with me, and he said, "What I'm getting sushi tonight. Why don't you guys join me?" And I said, "Great, that'd be awesome." And we had been getting along on set and everything, and so we walked into the sushi restaurant, and
Run! Run! Run!
I'm gonna find my dad. Dead or alive.
hey
Jim,
man,
going?
how are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. Good to see you.
Hey, you too. Where are you at in the world?
I live in a little town in Texas, outside of Dallas, called Lucas, Texas.
Okay, so you're a Texan through and through and staying there, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, when I was 20, I moved to LA,
Yeah.
lived there for 12 years, lived in New York for 6 years, back to LA for 5, and I was like, I'm going home, man.
That's where it's best, right? I mean,
Dude, it is. Yeah.
home is where it's at. And I mean, it keeps you grounded. I can't blame you at all, you know?
Yeah. How about you? Where you at?
I'm in freezing Chicago.
Oh, wow.
It is.
Frozen.
Oh man, I'm telling today it's a big heat wave. It's like 20 degrees outside. Last couple days it was like zero, literally. So big
Wow.
time high of zero. So yeah, I've survived.
That's cool, man.
I
Yeah,
heard it was cold in Texas too, right? Did you get that
dude,
chill?
we had snow 2 weeks ago, and it stayed around for a week. And then earlier this week we had highs in the 20s, and it was with the wind chill. It felt like zero, and it was cold here. Yeah.
Wow.
People don't think about it, but Dallas is, kind of in the north part of the state. And
Mhm.
so everything that sweeps through the Rockies just goes through the plains of eastern Colorado and Oklahoma, just smashes us a couple times a year. But then, by Sunday, it's going to be 58 degrees or something like that.
There
So,
you go. It's getting better.
yeah, it's nice. Yeah, it's nice.
Hey, who hooked you up with that hoodie? Is one of the guys on set there? One of the our UFC guys?
Oh, no, no. When I was living in California, I was so tentative. I had started to want to kind of learn jujitsu and stuck my toe in the water in New York a little bit. And when I moved to California in 2019 for the show I was doing, I was living maybe 10 miles away from Gracie University. So that's Henner and Huron Gracie's school.
Hmm.
And their dad is the one who brought jujitsu to America, Jorge and Gracie. And I went by and just wanted to check it out. And I was like, maybe someday. And this awesome guy, Edison Moraes, who's a friend of mine, an instructor now, but he said, why do you want to wait to start? And I said, well, I'm not in shape, and and he said, let's start today. And I said, oh, okay. And so, off and on for the years that I was out there doing that show, I would train there in Torrance, and um, yeah, it's
Oh, that's
great. Great
fantastic.
guys.
I mean,
Yeah,
small
yeah.
world. I'm sure you and Dean and Weidman and Sterling had some conversations then about MMA.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna. It was MMA and the UFC in particular that got me interested in jujitsu at all. And
Wow.
yeah, so Dean and I have had some, it's the same way they're curious and interested about this stuff.
Hmm.
Um, I was unabashed with my curiosity about things. What happened in this fight? What about this and that? What about in the street? Does this still work? And like
Yeah.
those guys are so awesome. I look up to those guys so much, and it was a cool thing to have them come into our world a little bit. And every Saturday, I'm glued to the TV watching the fights.
Uh-huh. I mean,
Yeah.
I spoke to Dean yesterday, and
Oh,
we're
cool.
obviously talking about the movie, but then we got into a point where we're booking fantasy matches for the rest of this year's UFC card.
Oh, dude, are you a fight fan?
Oh, big fight fan.
Awesome. So you know where I'm coming from then. Where it's like
100%.
it's the best thing going in the world. It's
I mean,
I was a sports fan my entire life and still am, but was particularly football and basketball. Just that was my thing.
yeah.
And I probably in the last 4 years, I started watching UFC about 6 years ago, five and
Uh-huh.
a half years ago, and I've probably watched 10 football games since then because I'm like, dude, is awesome as it is. It's like,
It's addictive, man. It is
yeah, it's not this. It's not this. So
most unpredictable thing. I mean, there's always interest
right,
and drama. And it was interesting to talk to Dean. I'm sure maybe had these conversations. He started UFC 32 and the evolution. He's like, man, I used to
yeah,
wrestle with in bars, basically fight in bars,
yeah,
12 people. And now to see where, you have Trump coming on and all these
crazy.
major celebrities being sucked into this world. It's amazing just from their perspective too, how this sport has grown and evolved.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild, man. The guy that brought me to the dance was Conor McGregor, and I was like,
Yeah.
just because that was the exposure for somebody who wasn't already looking at UFC, he kind of leaked out into the rest of the
Mhm.
world. I was like, who is this guy? And the very first pay-per-view I ever got was Woodley Till in 2018, and
Uh-huh.
then the next, and that was leading into ramping into that's where they dropped the trailer for the Conor Khabib fight, and I was living in New York at the time, and my buddy Michael Gandolfini and I were just hooked on Conor. We went to Times Square and watched the press conference on the big screens there at Times Square,
Oh,
and like saw Conor go by in like a motorcade, and we were both like schoolgirls, just like, holy shit, I saw him, and like that level of fandom. And then that was like if you were watching a pay-per-view for the first time, I think at the time it was like $60 or something.
yeah.
But if you paid your $60 and saw that card, that was Derek Lewis, My Balls Is Hot. That was Tony Anthony Pettis.
That's right,
That was
man.
the aftermath of Khabib and Connor.
Uh-huh.
Oliveira was on that card. Who he and Max are probably my two favorite fighters that are
Still going
still
strong. Can you believe some of these guys are
dude,
main eventing now?
crazy. It's
It's
crazy.
insane. It's
But that
insane.
was if there was a card that was gonna put the hooks in you, you know what I mean? Like
Uh-huh.
that's
That's a really good one.
that's it. And then my wife and I started going to live events. Our first live event was 245, so the first Usman Colby.
Oh
And if you look at
yeah.
that card, you had
Ooh.
Peter Yan and Uriah Faber, Amanda Nunes fought on that card. Max and Volk had their first fight.
That's insane to think that card was so loaded. When
Dude, it
you look
was
back now,
stacked. It was three championship fights, and we had just moved to LA and had a little pocket money, and I said, dude, let's just go look, let's just go see what it's all about.
Uh-huh.
And we walked into the arena, came through the doors, and we're heading down to our seats, and the fights had just like the early prelims had just started,
Mm-hmm.
and saw Jeff Neal head kick this guy into oblivion, and just watched his soul leave the arena. And I was like, oh my god, this is it's a combination of what's cool about going to a football game and what's cool about seeing a fight at the bike racks after school. And it's
Uh-huh.
like, have you been to live events?
I have not, man. I'm dying to go.
Dude.
Like, damn, not. I was talking to Dean. I'm like, why did they avoid Chicago? It's a big market.
Yeah, they haven't they
Not been
haven't been
here
there in a
in
while, huh?
years. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been almost a decade. I think they've been here,
Well, you
but
guys have a champion now too.
yeah. Well, damn,
Bilal's in Chicago, right?
Bilal. I mean, Juliana Pena's Chicago.
Giuliani, yeah, right.
Yeah, Curtis Blades is a Chicago. They could do a whole
Yeah,
if they want to, but
yeah,
it's an interesting thing. But yeah, I mean, if it's nearby, I'm going to hit it. I mean, if I was in LA, I would have gone seen
yeah,
311. That was a hell
yeah.
of
Same,
a night too. But it's
dude. That
man,
was a trip.
these guys are just absolute badasses in every way. So
Yeah, yeah,
and they're doing a crossover too. Connor's doing movies. I mean, Randy Couture's done
yeah,
movies in the past, and like these guys
yeah.
crossed over to your industry.
It's great, man. Like I was so the approach to acting that I studied and then later started teaching is really about, look, get out of your head, get out of your ideas about
Mhm.
what something should be. Um, be present in the moment, responding to what's happening, really doing what you're doing and really responding to what's coming your way with no real plan. And so before I knew much about fighting, I'd been a boxing fan, and I was dragging those analogies out for my students all the time and say, be reflexive about this stuff. Don't on a Thursday night, 2 weeks before you shoot a scene, write down, in this moment I'll do this. Like, you don't know. You have no idea, right?
Right.
And
It's
do
life.
it
Life is
like,
unpredictable. So acting
that's right.
can't be predicted in that sense.
Well, and when it is, you can tell. And when it's unpredictable, you can tell. And I believe wholeheartedly that when it's more like life, it's better. And when it's spontaneous, like life is, it's better. And when it's somebody working out of their human instincts instead of their what should I do here? What would be the right thing to do here? That kind of manufactured preciousness, like that doesn't land the same way that an authentic moment lands, right? And so if I were teaching now, which I don't anymore, I might get someday, but I would be pointing them to these guys and say, if Aljamain decides last week that at the 2.5 minute mark of the second round, he's going to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
It's regardless of what's coming his way, it's probably going to cost him his ass. But if he's prepared and responding in the moment to what's coming his way, he's got a shot. And I think acting is the same way.
100%. That is well put. I mean, I try to, Dean was talking about how improv changed the game for him in acting.
Yeah,
I feel like improv is the best training tool for any actors. I mean, it will get you out of your head. It'll get you to listen, be in the moment. It's the number one thing, at least I'd say from my end.
Well, and one of my heroes is John Cassavetes, who was an actor that became a director. I've actually got this portrait of him making a movie autograph right here on my desk. It's always inspired me.
Wow.
But he said, look, even when you're doing scripted work, okay, the words will be the words and you're going to say them, but be behaviorally and emotionally improvisational. Why do 2 takes the same way? And the kind of network TV or studio answer would be, well, we've got continuity. And my response to that would be, continuity is the editor's job.
Right.
They figure it out. There's a whole profession dedicated to, among other things, continuity. But for the actor to be improvisational, even in their behavior, the words can be the same, but to be fresh with what you do and feel and the way you take things and the way you respond can always be improvisational, even if there's kind of a strict script of what to say. And it takes a while to get comfortable working that way, but if you stay the course, at some point through the years, that just becomes the way you work, and it's something I think that the audience maybe can't explain, but I think that they could feel.
Yeah, it's the most freeing thing ever. Like, I didn't script this interview. Believe me, I wanted to go to any direction it went. So like whenever I talk to someone, it's a natural conversation. It goes, it flows in different directions. If I ever plan stuff up, I mean, I have an idea what I want to talk about. I'm sort of into the movie and all, but the whole thing about keeping it in the moment for me is exciting as an interview.
It is, and that's where excitement's to be found, right? Like with most things. And Dean and I have had some awesome conversations about acting. He's got really good instincts. He's got a really good I feel like people have a built-in truth meter where you want to be bold, right, with your acting, but you don't want to be so bold that you push past reality. And it's sort of like a hairline trigger. It's like I think of it like a trigger where you can start to squeeze it, and at some point it's going to click, right? And with acting, if you do it too much, if you overdo it, that seems to be the most egregious thing. That seems to be things that audiences notice first of all. 100%. Like if you were to ask any 15-year-old kid what is bad acting, they'd say when they overdo it, right? In other words,
you can tell when someone's forcing something, when it just doesn't feel authentic. You feel it.
Forced, and the other nasty little F word is faked, right? And Dean has a good sense of, without a ton of experience and without a ton of training, he's just an authentic person. And there's some sense that he carries with him that's like, okay, I can't, whatever else, I can't exchange my human authenticity for some result when it's time to act. And that's exactly right. And that's his own instinct. It's not something he learned. That's just kind of rose up out of him. And Aljamain too. Like, those guys deal with such consequential reality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That I think in their world, fakers are not welcome. And whether it's boxing or on the jujitsu mat, you can't get by on anything other than the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fake your way at the jujitsu academy into being
No.
respected for your jujitsu. It's like, you've got it or you don't. And if you don't, that's okay. Nobody's gonna shit on you for it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just recognize this is where you're at and there's room to grow. And it would be so healthy and so good for actors that are interested in their own development to study these guys and to see the way they deal with reality, and they face their own shortcomings and they get to work addressing them.
Yeah.
And
It's a lot of parallels Dean
yeah,
and I discussed between acting and the fight game. It's
yeah,
the motivation, it's a preparation, it's sort of the, you know,
yes,
it's so many things kind of line up that you can see the authenticity of everything like you
yes,
broke down. It's a really interesting parallel when you put it together. And then when you're on set, it's like you're an athlete too. If you want to put it into sports terms, that's the coach. The director's a coach and
yeah,
running the plays. Um,
yeah.
the sports and acting really align on so many ways if you really break it down.
They do. And if you go back to kind of the birth of truthful acting coming out of the Moscow Art Theater in Russia, a lot of those people weren't, um, well, let me put it this way. A lot of those people were coming to acting from ballet, they were
Hmm.
acrobats, they were gymnasts, some of them, right?
Yeah.
And they were athletes. And so as they were developing what became modern, truthful moment to moment acting, there were under the tutelage of Stanislavski, there were a lot of really athletic people that had already disciplined and mastered something else. Like my wife's a ballerina, so the concept of um, responding, being responsive and expressive wasn't new to her. She went, "Oh yeah, I've been trained in that." And my students that come, I had a student that was a U.S. men's Olympic gymnast,
Uh-huh.
right? And he wanted to get into acting. And I was like, dude, trust that what you learned from that and what you possess from that has got you 90% of the way home. Like, you know what I mean? The
The
discipline,
discipline, the commitment, yes.
yeah, the commitment, the ability to concentrate, the ability to deal with what is instead of what you hoped things would be or think things ought to be. And the thing that seems to intercept, especially when people are making their beginnings at acting, the thing that seems to intercept their ability to have good, truthful moments is their wish or desire to be good,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah,
and
the drive.
it's
That
like if you
athlete's
think back, kind
drive
of
is,
your first kiss, where you're like, I want to do this right.
uh-huh.
There's no way you're any good at it, right?
No,
And
because you
part of
don't
the
have
reason you were no
experience,
good
right?
at it is because of how desperately you wanted to be good. And it's a kind of a cloudy, amorphous thing to take aim at, to say I want to be good. Um, it's got to go. It's in the way. It's interfering.
Yep.
And if you can set it down and say, yeah, of course I want to be good, but this scene has me breaking up with my girlfriend, so I'm gonna really break up with her.
Hmm.
That you can do. And that's what the gymnast and the ballerina and the fighter understand is there's things that you can throw yourself into and do with reality. And of course your emotions come along. Of course your feelings come along. Um, it's and they come along because what you're doing for real.
Hmm.
So that was my training as an actor, and it was cool to, after years of kind of making those connections and analogies, get on set with Dean and Aljamain and you know, for all their, I'm sure they were a little nervous,
Mhm.
but they kind of stuck to what they knew, which is do things with reality, really do it. And it was a lot of fun. And Rory did an awesome job of mixing up people that were experienced actors and that were new
Yeah.
and fresh. So yeah.
100%. You can see it too on screen. Man, I'm telling you
Hmm.
what, this movie blew me away. I have not seen a movie that reveals a twist like that. Usually you see films coming, like you get
Oh,
excited,
good,
but
good,
man, this,
good.
this one, the only thing I was telling Harlan too, I'm going to speak to everyone
Yeah,
here involved with
yeah.
this movie. It was like, if you've seen that movie, Michael Douglas and Sean
The
Penn,
game.
the game. That's the last
Yeah.
second thing that really got me. They're like, whoa,
Yep.
I didn't see this coming. That was mind blowing. This movie was in that way. And along
Awesome.
the way, it had a great message. When you get to that final point, you understand the reasoning of it all and see it. I think what Rory did here, um, with embedding a really important message too, and this movie's
Yeah.
art. But also throwing that twist so you get to
Yeah.
that ride at the end. Just unbelievable work directing and writing this.
Awesome, dude. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. And that's the one thing you can't do, even when there's not a twist, is you can't let the audience as a storyteller, whether it's if you're writing a play, you can't have the audience get ahead of you, right? And get to the
Yeah.
conclusion or get to the ending before it comes. If you're making a movie, you can't do it. If it'd be like if you somehow in the first quarter of a game took a peek at what the final score was, you just wouldn't care. You wouldn't
Yeah.
watch the rest of the game. If you get ahead of the movie, you're toast. And if
Uh-huh.
your movie kind of hinges on a twist, or really what it is a surprise, I guess, um, and somebody gets there before you do, now it's not just the kind of sin of now they know, but this movie was depending on it being surprising, and it's not, which means it's dead. It's all the way dead. And
Yeah.
so one of the things with my part in particular was uh, I felt a lot of the responsibility of the audience going, this is a real bad situation this kid's in,
Yep.
kind of fell on my role, and because I was the guide through this thing, right? And so
Mhm.
if something about the choices I made or how to come at that tipped our hat, and if I was kind of winking my way through it, saying we're not really in trouble, this is all for your maturation and development as a young man and all the rest, it would absolutely blow it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try to really embed myself into a guy who gave up on life and lives off the grid. He's in the woods, and I thought it was important to show real reluctance. Do I help or not?
Mhm.
Also that nobody goes, oh, this is all a setup, right?
Right.
And um,
Oh yeah, you believed.
just fun thing to act. Yeah,
Yeah. Because I guess the guy's like, oh, is he going to help out or not? He's sort of you really kind of jumped the lines there, when it came to
awesome.
relationship, which I loved seeing on screen because it was just like one moment you think like, yeah, he's here to support him, but other like maybe he's just going to let him go, and be him. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was really well done how you sort of tipped the toes into the water.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that. We had so much fun. There's in my experience, there's very, very few things that are as fun as making a movie with your friends.
I mean, tell me this, Jim. You work
Yeah.
with John's dad a lot too. What
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that the parallel there is unique too. You get to work now with his son and have these sort of intimate on-screen moments, like a father figure son too. What was
Yeah.
that like? Did you get texts from Rob? It's just like, hey, how's John doing there or whatnot? Because I mean, you've seen both sides of it, and you get to work with these
Yeah.
guys too. What was that experience like?
Well, dude, they're an awesome family. Like I didn't know when Rob and I started working together on Lone Star, I didn't know anything about him except that, when I was a kid, probably like you, The Outsiders was something that
Yeah.
you watched as often as you could, right? Um and I always loved Rob and Wayne's World. Oh, he was just somebody I just knew and liked, but I didn't know anything about him personally. And one of the first real kind of moments where I got to see who he was we did a couple of days. We shot that show in LA, but we did a couple of days in Austin in the first season. And you know, we were wrapping up a day, and and my wife was with me, and he said, "What, you know, I'm getting sushi tonight. Why don't you guys join me?" And I said, "Great, it'd be awesome." And we had been getting along on set and everything, and so we walked into the sushi restaurant, and his other son Matthew was there. So Rob was there, a couple friends, Matthew, my wife, and I. And within a couple of minutes, his son Matthew looks at his phone, and he goes, "I passed." And Rob lit up with joy, and they jumped up and they hugged in the sushi restaurant. And I was like, "What's that?" And what it was is his son had just passed the bar exam.
Oh, wow.
And Rob was so proud and so unashamed to just pour out this love that I was like, that's who this guy is. Like, that's the root. Whatever else, you know, whatever the public image is, this is a dude who loves his family, and it was a cool moment to be a part of. And then Johnny was a writer on Lone Star, and so I met him on set a couple times, and we had some things in common. Rob and Johnny and I all are sober guys, and we would talk about that a little bit. And I think it was about 4 years ago this month that Johnny was like, "Hey, you know, have you ever seen?" And he started naming some of Rory's documentaries, and I said, "Yeah, of course, the Christian Laettner one, and you know, I hate Christian Laettner." And I was like, "Yeah," and he said, "Well, that guy's making a movie, and I'm playing the lead, and there's this kind of mentor role. You take a look at it." I said, "Yeah," and then they said, "Do you want to produce it?" I said, "Yeah." And at that point, Johnny and I were already pretty good friends. But where we really took off and where the friendship really deepened, it became not just, you know, me and Rob's kid, or me and a writer from the show, but just me and Johnny was working on this movie. And the months leading up to it, I'd go up to Santa Barbara, and we'd sit down and go over the script and try to pitch Rory on what we thought would be more believable or more surprising or whatever. And by the time we got there, you know, it was funny. We flew out to Charlotte together, and Johnny had never been to a Cracker Barrel. I don't know if you guys know. Over here, and we landed in North Carolina, and I don't know if you've talked to my buddy Sean Kerrigan yet.
I'm talking to him in half an hour, so I can't.
Great. Yeah, great. So we were all at the airport, and it was about a 3-hour drive to the little town we shot this in. I saw Cracker Barrel, and I said, "Oh, dude, you guys want to eat there?" And Sean went, "Fuck yeah." And Johnny went, "What's a Cracker Barrel?" And I went, "What's a Cracker Barrel? Get in here." And we sat down, and it was cool because he was having the kinds of experiences on that movie that his dad had told him were some of his favorites, which is a small personal movie where nobody's got any money. You're staying at a shitty hotel. You know, the food's bad, the coffee's bad, but the times are good. Everybody's having a good time. And we just bonded over that period of time. And Sean and I were actually in acting class together 20 years ago. And
where at?
when I read a place called Playhouse West.
Oh, I've taken classes there.
With Bob Carnegie?
No, I had. Well,
yeah,
no,
okay.
I was there. I'll tell you when. 2012.
Okay, yeah. I was teaching there at the time.
Were you?
Yeah.
I know.
In North Hollywood?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mark Pellegrino was there, I think.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah?
Mark and Sean are friends too. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that crew we crossed. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I spent the summer there taking classes. Yep.
Yeah.
In that little building, you know, that little hut.
Shitty, of course, yeah.
Oh, man.
That's that little building has more to do with my dreams coming true than anything else in my life.
What a space.
Right? So,
space.
It's great. It's great. So Rory said, "Do you have any ideas for the bad guy?" And I read it, and I was like, "Dude, I haven't talked to Sean in a couple years, but I said, I got a friend, man, that he won't have to fake it. This dude can really hurt you. He's got two sides to him, because you needed the guy at the end to be able to demonstrate that the guy, you know, whoever played Luther had to be full of violence, right, and be a real menace, and then you needed at the end to see that this was a big-hearted guy who was helping people out the hard way, right?" And I said, "Dude, that's my buddy Sean, who's got a heart of gold, but he's also a killer. You know, he was a boxer and a wrestler, and I had seen him deal with some real life situations, and I was like, dude, there's a living streak of protective violence in this man.
Wow.
And when Dean and him worked out a few times, and Dean was holding mitts for Sean, and they were boxing, and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Don't fuck with him." I said, "Yeah."
Okay, well, you got the confirmation. Hey, I mean, that's all you need.
If Dean Thomas tips his hat, bro,
Yeah.
you know how to use your hands. And so,
Oh yeah.
so I said, and then him and Rory and Sean became really good friends, and Johnny and Sean became friends, and it's amazing what can happen when you go off, in this case, into the woods, and you kind of set your own values. There's no studio there to say, "Oh, we make sure it's this or make sure it's that." It's everything's really um, coming out of the creators. The creators are calling the shots, and it means you live with your mistakes, right? But nobody else is running interference on what you're trying to do. And so we got out there, and we all made friends, and we all ate the bad food together, and
yeah,
it was
that's how you
beautiful
bond.
summer, dude. It was great. It was the best time. We were out there for about a month, and I tried to do as much work ahead of time so that on the day I could just show up and see how I might respond to things in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fantastic, man. Uh,
yeah,
dude, I mean, like I said, I'm so happy I'm sort of a little part of this movie, getting to talk to all of you.
yeah. This is
Hearing
cool.
that my quotes for the review are going to be on the DVD, so I'm hyped about
Oh,
that.
no way. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So yeah, they're gonna put it on
Yeah,
DVD of the film. I really genuinely enjoyed this film for the message and the performance. Is just
yeah.
something about it. It really is unique in so many.
That's
So I can
awesome.
see why you guys bonded, because uh,
Yeah.
it's scripts like that, and I'm guessing experiences like that don't come often. So
No, they don't.
mhm.
No, they really don't. And for Johnny, it was the first time the weight of a whole project. Like
Yeah,
he had been here and there and stuff, but it was a really tall order, and I thought he handled it so well. You know what I mean? I thought it didn't look like it was his first time leading a movie.
100%
Um,
not. He knocked it out.
right?
And Dean was
And I
giving him
think,
credit for the physicality he went through, the tumbling, the
yeah,
falling. That takes.
yeah.
There's no stunt doubles on this set. You know what I mean? So
No, there's no money for any of that stuff.
yeah,
So if you see it happening, it's the actors doing it, and it was just so much fun, man. It was the best time. That's the trade off is it's tough sometimes to get an audience to take a look at the thing you care about when you do a movie of this scale, because there's no machinery behind it pumping it into people's
right.
consciousness, and it's kind of up to you, and that can be a dogfight. It's tough to get eyeballs on it. But the trade off is you get to do it your way, and you get to pick who you do it with, and you get to enjoy it as fully as possible. And
100%.
I really believe that, whether it's a movie or theater or whatever else, if you do it with joy instead of being preoccupied with, is this going to be okay? I think both of those things make it to the screen. I think somehow, in some mysterious way, the joy that you make something with, something of it transfers to the audience through the movie. And I think if you're uptight and afraid and second guessing yourself, I think that makes its way to the audience too. And with this one, for the flaws that the movie does have, I think you can sense the spirit that it was made in when you watch it, which was a spirit of joy.
100%. And you had to.
Yeah,
You have a few weeks to shoot it. I mean, you bond together really quick on these,
yeah,
films with a little budget and quick turnarounds, few week shoots. Man, you just, it's a grassroots effort. You all have to be in. The
yeah,
crew, the
yeah,
cast, everyone needs to believe in it to make it happen.
yeah. The crew killed it. They were great. They were on the gun too, and
Hmm.
nobody. It was, at times it was hot, at times it was kind of gross out and everything, and they're out there all day. There were no trailers, and
Hmm.
I don't mind that. It's like we're making a movie about being in the woods, so that's the deal. We're going to be in the woods. That's okay. If you don't want to
Commitment.
do it, don't say yes to it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, but don't make it easier for yourself or more comfortable for yourself. And it was great, man. It was just so much fun, and we all left saying, we all left fully aware of what a kind of special time we all had,
Yeah.
and we're saying, I hope we get to do it again, but if not, this was really special.
That's cool. That you when you leave, I think that's all you can ask for as an actor, having that sort of
Hmm.
memories, that sort of feeling of like, hey, we did something here together, and this is special to me. In my
Yeah,
career, and you've done a lot of stuff. So for this movie to kind of hold a place in your heart, that
it
means
does. Yeah, yeah, that's true. It's some things you don't think about at all. Some things you think about because they were a nightmare. Some things it's like, man, I got to secure something for my family or buy a house because of that thing. And this thing was like, we got to go play like children. You know what I mean? And just have a ball and trust that if we had a good time, the audience would have a good time. And it was cool, man. It was really cool.
yeah, just
So
the parallels and things that crossed even for you personally, being an MMA fan, getting to work
yeah,
with these guys that you watch and you're a fan of, getting to work with John, someone you're familiar with through Rob, and,
yeah,
and through the show, writing the show, and Rory in a sense, being this sort of innovative filmmaker. I mean, there's a lot of good parts. And Sean, I mean, wow, it
yeah.
really is like working with friends and sort of like a
It's
dream
awesome.
scenario in a lot of ways too, with the people involved.
Yeah, and there was kind of this thread of sobriety running through it too, where
Mhm.
I won't say who, but a couple, I think more than a couple people that worked on it are now sober and
Wow.
that weren't before, and Johnny and I were, and it's like it's a really bizarre roundabout way to get somebody sober. This point thing, but
Uh-huh.
the truth is, the movie starts because the kid's a drug addict, and the way I kind of put it is it's a movie about a selfish, self-centered, weak kid whose father is murdered and finds himself in the woods. And if he can't get through the woods, he's going to die. There's dangerous people coming after him.
Mhm.
And the only way he's going to get through the woods is if instead of being selfish and weak, he becomes sacrificing and someone you can count on and becomes a man,
And trust
right?
people
And
too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, he has to trust people and he has to be someone that people can trust.
Yeah.
And my character is there to guide him through that process. And by the end of the movie, instead of being a weak kid, he's somebody you can count on.
Hmm.
And what a good what a good example to set for young men.
100%.
And
And the metaphor.
I think that's the audience for this movie. I
Yeah.
think I think 10 to 12 to 16 to 17-year old, specifically young men and boys. I think they're going to look up to Johnny. You know what I mean? Like you and I can watch it and go,
Yeah.
that's a cool movie and that's a cool twist. But if you were a kid and you saw essentially another kid go through the process of uh, having your life be endangered and coming out the other side, a man, that's an inspiration. And I think, if I were the distributors, that's who I'd be taking aim at.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
self-discovery. And like I said, Rory,
yeah,
great metaphor here. The character's running from these big bad guys, but he's really running from himself,
sure.
and
Yeah,
that's the
he's a
metaphor
mess.
of the movie here, too. And like you said, I think that's a good target here because it's that growth. You're trying to figure yourself out that age, and I feel
Yeah,
like you make a lot of mistakes, you do things, you don't know where your life's going, and that's what we see here with Johnny in this movie. So well said. I think that would be a good aim because the movie does have a positive message that it's trying to
yeah.
hit home. So that's an important aspect.
Well, you don't see, you and I grew up. I think you're probably considerably younger than me, but
Not I'm in my late 30s, so we're a few
no,
years,
I'm 43, so around the same
so
generation,
few
right?
years apart.
But there was no shortage of movies coming out that were meant to inspire young men to be the kinds of men they ought to be, right?
Yeah.
And I don't see that on the landscape right now of movies and shows, right? There's
I
not
can't think of anything.
inspirational stories about, especially with young people, about there's not that kind of encouragement or guidance. And I don't think movies ought to try to change people or change the world. I think they ought to be enjoyed, and if they are enjoyed, like Harold Clurman, the founder of the group theater and the director, and eventually he was a critic and everything else, said, how do you get the audience to ingest the truth? And he says, well, first you get their heads back laughing, and then when their mouth is open, you pour the truth in,
Mm,
right? And so, in other words, don't make it about the message. Make it about a good story well told that the audience can enjoy. And if they enjoy it, and there is a message, the message will probably take hold. And the message here is one of encouragement and inspiration for young men. And
yeah,
we've had no problem for the last 10 or 15 years shaming young men and telling them what a bane they are to the rest of us and how dangerous they are and toxic they are and everything else. But nobody stopped and told them, hey, you've got to set your weakness and your selfishness aside, and you have to become sacrificing and courageous. And this movie puts that on the table. And if a young man wants to pick it up as inspiration, I think they could.
Yeah, Jim, we're running out of time here. It's going to shut off.
Brother.
Welcome to Grace Point.